everyone. Now, I am currently missing one of my panel members, but he's going to sneak in very shortly. He assures me he's not far away, but he is on country time, so I'm not sure what not far away quite means. But he has seen the whole start of this before, so at least he won't be missing anything. So I will kick off tonight with a little bit of housekeeping. In the event of emergency, please follow the directions of staff. So we've got some down the back and to the sides there. Councillors sort of know what they're doing a little bit too. Earthquake, in the event of an earthquake, drop, cover and hold. Tsunami, please exit the building and move to higher ground. Fire, safely exit the building and meet at the assembly points, which if you're going out this door is the courthouse or this way is Customs House. Now, if it is in the event of a gas leak, you will be told it's gas and we go a little bit further away than that. Toilet locations, we have toilets just out through the doors there, and our emergency exits are there and there. So basically just look after each other. Now, tonight's meeting is the fourth in a series of a simplifying local government set of community meetings. Now, it's being recorded and live streamed in an effort to inform as many people as possible. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here tonight. I know people are busy, and that for many in our community, this is a time of a lot of frustration, uncertainty, and concern. So particularly as we work through these difficult conversations around affordability and rates, and the future shape of what local government is. These pressures are absolutely real. The rates increase we're seeing are not easy for anyone, but what they do help demonstrate is the reality that many small and rural communities and councils are facing in today's environment. The cost of delivering core services, maintaining infrastructure, meeting regulatory requirements and planning for the future has grown significantly. And if we add regional council functions to the list, for communities like Waitaki, that raises some really hard questions about what's affordable, what is sustainable, and what kind of local government structure will best serve us in the years ahead. So tonight is about starting that conversation in a constructive way. So first of all, I'd like to welcome our panel members. Now, first of all, we have Kai Whakatere, or Chair for Tirunanga o Ngāi Tahu, Justin Tipa, welcome. President for North Otago Federated Farmers, arrived just in the nick of time, Otto Dogterom. The Chair of the Oamaru Ratepayers and Residents Group is Ray Henderson, and the Waitaki District Council CEO Alex Palmley and myself. And a big welcome also to our facilitator for the night who will keep us under control, Mr. Jim Thompson. I'd also like to welcome along councillors that we've got hanging around here today. Some of them will be running mics a bit later on. John McCone, Sven Thowning, Dan Lewis, Jim Hopkins, Jeremy Holding, Fran Slack, Hana Fanina Ta'iti and Deputy Mayor Becca Ryan. So tonight is about making sure our community has a voice in shaping what change looks like. It's about choosing our destiny rather than waiting for it to be chosen for us. Most importantly though, tonight is about hearing from you. So Alex is going to start with an overview of why we're actually here and about the road ahead. And then I'm going to give a quick outline of some of the options that we have in front of us. We're then going to put a number of questions to our panel members, which is really going to tease out what some of our options are and what some of our concerns may be, before we open up the floor to questions and thoughts. So you're quite welcome not just to ask questions, but also to tell us what you think about the whole thing. Timeframes for us are incredibly tight, and so frustratingly our data for these decisions will be very light. We may not be able to answer everything tonight, but we will do our best to answer what we can. So again, thank you very much for being here tonight and being part of a very important conversation about the future for Waitaki. So nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Alex.
Thank you, Mayor Mel. I'm going to stand here because we're live streaming, and apparently if I stand too far forward, the camera can't see. I'm not going to talk for long. I'm just going to say a little bit about the background to the reforms and how they affect our council. So back in November 2025, the government announced its simplifying local government reforms and opened up consultation on that. And its original proposal was that regional councillors would go pretty swiftly, and that committees would be set up for each region, consisting of the mayors of those regions, and they would govern regional councils until such point as a new system was in place, and they'd be responsible for designing that new system of local government for each region. Through that consultation, the government heard from over 1,000 submissions, mostly organisations, and people broadly agreed that reform of local government was needed, but many raised concerns about democratic representation, about the amount of workload that would be put on mayors in terms of leading their communities, but also governing regional councils and designing a new system, but also concerns about doing this at the same time as other reforms and how that fitted together. So on the 5th of May, the government announced a refined approach, including a Head Start pathway for councils, which is a bit of a fast-track approach. So I'm going to talk a little bit through that and what it means. So first of all, how it works today. I'm sure most people are familiar with the system, but most parts of New Zealand have 2 councils. Some have a unitary council already, but very few, but most have 2 councils, a regional council and then a city or a district council. And each of them have their own elected members, and they have separate responsibilities, but some of those responsibilities sometimes overlap. And what the reform is seeking to do is really combine those 2 layers of local government into unitary councils to try and reduce the duplication and make it a more simpler system and a more accountable system to the people that it serves. So these were the main announcements that are up on the screen for those in the audience around the new pathway, the Head Start pathway. So essentially it's a fast-track route, and councils that are ready to move need to submit a proposal by the 9th of August, which isn't very far away from when they announced the changes. For those who aren't ready or who don't get accepted in that, there's something called the backstop. And this is a process that the government hasn't yet designed, but it's a process that they'll impose on all those that are not in that Head Start pathway. And so it's a bit of a mystery what that involves at the moment. The government's done a review of regional functions, and at this stage is saying most of those regional functions, such as flood protection, biosecurity, public transport and environmental management, will stay with local government and not be moved to central government or government agencies. But it envisages that in all areas, regional councillors will be gone by 2028, and for those that are not in this Head Start arrangement, there'll be transitional arrangements put in place to govern those functions. But the direction they're taking is clear. Both pathways, whether you're in the Head Start or the backstop, lead to unitary councils, larger unitary councils for each part of the country. And there isn't an option outside of this. We all have to look at amalgamations and unitaries and what are the best arrangements. But I wanted to emphasise that there is no decision made yet, and this is an important part of the feedback we need to get from you in terms of what's important to you that we need to think about in discussions with our fellow councils around what future arrangements might be. So looking at the 2 routes, for those in the room, that on the left of the screen is the Head Start pathway. So councils need to submit an outline proposal. So it's not a detailed proposal of how everything works, but an outline proposal by the 9th of August. And then those will be assessed by officials in August and early September before Cabinet agrees which proposals it wants to take forward. And for those it wishes to take forward, there'll then be a process where those councils have to go through detailed design of what those arrangements look like, and the government will then develop legislation to bring that into effect. On the right-hand side is the backstop, which is the mandatory route for every council that isn't in that Head Start phase. And like I said, it's not clear how this will work at this stage, but the government has made it clear that this will be a process driven by Wellington rather than by local communities, but it envisages full reorganisation across the remaining regions, with those arrangements coming into effect in 2031. So Head Start councils will change in 2028. For the rest, it would be 2031. But again, as I said before, both routes lead to unitary councils, but the message is that if you're in the Head Start, you've got an opportunity to shape this for yourself, whereas if you go into the backstop process, there's going to be a long period of uncertainty, in which the government shapes the future for you and your community. And then finally, just to cover what the government is looking for, so there are some entry requirements. So no council can propose reorganisation on its own. It needs to have at least 2 councils proposing reorganisation arrangements. And it needs to be deliverable in pretty quick time, so by the 2028 elections, which sounds like a long time away, but when you're bringing councils together, there is a lot to consider, a lot to think about in that. Each council will need to show how it meets, or each proposal will need to show how it meets the 5 criteria set out by the government, which are that it's deliverable, that it simplifies local government, so it gets rid of some of the complexity, it makes accountability clear to communities, who's responsible for what, removes some of the duplication that exists. It needs to show that there's going to be economies of scale, so there's going to be savings in this. It's going to be a cheaper way to deliver local government. It needs to support the new planning system, so the RMA reform that's going through Parliament at the moment. It needs to be able to support that and show how that planning system will work under those proposals. And then finally, it needs to maintain local voice. So it needs to show how communities will still have a good say in terms of what happens within their area and the services that are provided. So it proposes that it's light touch at this stage, and that if it's accepted, a proposal would then go into more detailed development. The other thing that government has set out is their expectation that for most regions, it'd be 1 unitary council per region, but there's an ability for regions that are larger and more complex to propose more, so 2, potentially 3 unitary councils, but they haven't set any parameters in terms of population size or geographical size, but they are looking for a lot fewer councils in the future.
All right, so this is next slide, talking a little bit about some of the options at play. So as a council, what we've done, and we've spent the very short amount of time that we've had up our sleeve, to basically look at what all the options could be and to try and get as much information as we can. And through that, it's all the conversations we're having as well. Waitaki is really unique in the fact that we do sit across 2 regional councils. And so no matter what happens, I guess the simplification is going to happen, because for us to actually land in one place will make a whole lot of things for a whole lot of people a lot easier. So what we've done is we have been working, first of all, looking south with the Otago Mayoral Forum, and through that we've got a company called Morrison Lowe who are putting together a number of options. So up here we've got, essentially that is all of Otago, a unitary option, so that's involving all the councils in Otago and what that looks like as one unitary option. Then there is the option of a coastal Otago, which is ourselves, Dunedin and Clutha. And then the other version of that is obviously the central Otago sort of option, which is Central Otago, Queenstown Lakes District. And then we're looking at the idea of more of a rural option, just recognising that I guess the rural councils have a lot of different kind of issues at play than what metropolitan ones do. So that would be something like our Southern Waters option, which has sort of the councils along the middle looking at Central Otago, Waitaki, Clutha, and Gore's been part of some of those conversations, but it's a little bit complex there as well as to whether or not they have to look north or south. So that's our southern options, and I guess none of our options either have to stay, you're just going south or you're just going north, but we're just trying to gather as much information as we can. Then we've been standing up some work with Canterbury councils, so there is a whole Canterbury-wide discussion to understand what the whole region looks like. When it comes to the ones that we've been doing figures on, that's really just sitting in the Timaru, Mackenzie, Waimati, Ashburton in a questionable sort of state there as well. And a lot of the questions around that are around how we deal with our catchment. So Waitaki River in particular is something that we're really strongly trying to protect through this conversation, and we know from the conversations we've had in the first 3 community meetings that our community feel really strongly about that. So that's certainly a big part of our conversations. But yeah, at the moment anything is on the table. There's a few different conversations going on, and I know Timaru District Council met yesterday and haven't landed on all of Waitaki as any of their options, which is really interesting. And I think that sort of does play into some of the conversations we'll be having shortly about whether we step into the Head Start or we go to the backstop base, because we have a real risk in front of us of someone saying, right, I know what's best for Waitaki, and here's a line, and I'll draw that, and that's where the northern part of Waitaki goes, and this is where the southern part goes. And I think that that's a decision for Waitaki to make.
Thank you, Mayor Mel. I've been working hard this afternoon and prepared some questions for the panel. No, in all honesty, Mayor Mel gave me the questions because she's over the subject more than I am. But we're just going to work through 5 quick questions from the panel, and then we'll relate with the audience. And I'm sure I don't need to remind you all that we're all here to be nice and polite to each other. If anyone's to be abusive, it's got to be me first, okay? So the first question, what problem is this reform trying to solve, and what is not working well in this current system that we need the reform?
Yes, from our point of view, from the rural communities, the regional councils are dominated by the urban centres, and yeah, they got quite a different makeup and different goals than we got. So it makes it quite complicated for any sort of economic development in the rural areas. And yeah, they're a long way from us, not always very aware of the local circumstances, so yeah, it creates a lot of extra regulatory burden, what can hold us back. Plus, if we get a duplication of 2 authorities, what gives us extra cost. So yeah, that's how we see it.
So from my perspective, the system was designed in the 1980s, and things have changed a lot for local government since then. We've had more and more things placed on us by government that make it more complicated and make it more costly. Lots of what they call unfunded mandates. The scale of what we do now has grown massively, so we've got 1.4 billion of assets at Waitaki District Council, but spread over a large land area and a small ratepayer base. And the funding system is essentially broken, and the more rural you get, the more broken it looks in terms of the costs of doing business now and providing the services we're required to provide. I think also for Waitaki we've got some unique things as well that don't make it simple. So we've got landowners, farmers in this district who have one set of rules on one side of the road and another set of rules on another side of the road, and that's ridiculous really. In terms of the complications that causes for people trying to go about their business, and we need to be able to fix that through this process.
Oh, kia ora koutou, good evening everyone. The only thing I'd say, Alex, not everything designed in 1980 is past its use by. I was manufactured in 1980 and I'm still going well. Look, there's a number of challenges facing councils, and I think that really councils are not hiding to nothing at the moment. The increasing complexities when it comes to environmental and planning laws, scales of economy or economies of scale, they're the big challenges, and I think ultimately what's underpinning the changes, the cost of infrastructure, being able to balance the needs between urban and rural. But I think underpinning all of it also, we have to acknowledge that the system's broken, the funding system, the funding model. I think if we look at all public monies, 90% is spent by central government and 10% by councils. So that's inherently out of whack to begin with. But ultimately, for me, it's coming down to cost.
Yes, I'd take a step back straight away, and it's not what problem, it's whose problem are we solving. From the central government's point of view, they obviously want less councils to deal with. They had a big swipe at it nearly 40 years ago, and they obviously haven't finished the job yet. But anyway, to the matter in hand, looking at regional councils, the number of councils within them, there's obviously some duplication of services, and obviously there's staff doing jobs in both areas, and there's needless costs. So that has to be streamlined. We have to work out one area one lot of people deal with a job. Currently you've got regional councils, and some councils are probably doing and undoing their own work. So that's got to stop.
It's mostly been said, but I think absolutely when it comes to the cost side of things, we can't keep sustaining what we're doing at the moment. And the issue being we have so much infrastructure that we're dealing with as a council, and we've got such a small population to deal with it. And when they do increase the requirements, while it might, and I absolutely believe things like water, we need to have safe drinking water, but there's a fundamental issue here that our community cannot afford this. And we're starting to see the rubber hit the road in that space at the moment. On top of that as well, I think that there is a wider conversation, because you mentioned the cost at 90%, and it's somewhere around 88 or something like that. That's how much tax is collected at a national level. And when you look at what's actually spent on infrastructure at a local level around councils, it's about 60% or something is actually infrastructure spend is done through councils. And so it just does not line up as to how the funding mix goes. And for smaller councils in particular, when it comes to trying to get funding into your community from outside, the amount of hoops you need to jump through, and that's people, that's staff, that's time, is insanity. And so through this, while there needs to be change, and I think the idea of bringing a number of councils together and getting rid of the whole lot of the duplication is going to help, and it will help with some of the cost effectiveness. We still have other conversations that we need to have as a country to try and get this actually working in a way that's going to have a longevity to it.
Thank you for that. So what are the possible benefits of a larger or different council structure for service delivery, planning, infrastructure and decision making?
Alignment of functions and responsibilities, I think. What are those things that are best delivered across the island or at a larger scale? What things are best delivered locally, and what can be centralised? I think I heard an example today, the way the police appoint staff. They all don't have a whole lot of HR departments at every police station around the place, so even centralising HR functions, employment contracts and things like that, IT services. I think there's a lot of opportunities to gain those efficiencies and economies of scale. But for those things that are important, it's how do we keep that local decision making? And I think when we look at things like the Waitaki River, that catchment, I don't think many people outside of the district care the same way we do. So how do we ensure that the decision making for those key parts of our district remain local?
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to the possible benefits, I think councils could have done this, or bits and pieces of this, a long time ago. It didn't need to be amalgamation, and I think it's a wee bit sad that we're here in a lot of ways, because the conversations around shared services and around how we actually do a whole lot of things together and don't sort of, each of us stand in our own little corners and remake the wheel. It doesn't make sense, and it should have happened, but parochialism and just the ability to get a whole lot of people in a room and not have that attitude of if you win, I lose. That's where the problem comes in, and I think that we're going to see a little bit of that around the reform now. And I think one thing we do need to really push through this conversation is not who wins or how Waitaki wins, it's how everyone, no matter which direction we go in, how every council actually does better out of it, and their population does, because if South Island wins, if New Zealand wins, we all do better. So I think rather than this winner and let's see what we can grab and let's try and grab a few assets here and there, we need to look bigger, and we need to be a little bit braver in about how we do this, and this is a real opportunity.
So I'd say, clearly bringing councils together, having less councils, you're going to get some efficiencies from that, but there'll be a cost in getting there, and I think there's an opportunity to do better, because I think the costs will always be higher than people want them to be in amalgamating councils, and the efficiencies will always be less than you hope they'd be. So it's an opportunity to actually change up the system more fundamentally and have a look at how it works, how we can really simplify it, how we can get it working in a much more modern, flexible way, much more efficiently. And I think that's the only way that we're going to get real benefits out of this. Amalgamation on its own won't produce enough benefits to justify the costs and the disruption of doing it.
Yes, efficiency, but hopefully if we get the right partners, like we're a real rural service town, so if we can merge with similar sort of towns, we can unite ourselves better, and we probably get a better representation to the national government. Plus, we're more in control of our own settings with the regulation. So I think that'll be a big gain. Plus, probably because you're bigger, you can attract better quality people. So overall, I think the service is going to be more efficient and more affordable. But like Alex said, it's going to take a while. But going into the future, I think it's quite a benefit.
Thanks. Yes, the benefits of amalgamating. Currently, we may have a situation where we've got to communicate with our neighbours to work on some common interest. If we become our neighbour, that's going to make the communication a lot more direct. We know the wheels of local government, or any government, turn very slowly. Hopefully things will speed up a bit when we have a better communication. Obviously the strength in numbers when we amalgamate gives you purchasing power, gives you negotiating power, and obviously there's shared resources and no necessity to have duplicate resources in the different areas when they do amalgamate.
So, entering the field of localism, what needs safeguarded or protected in this process? Is it local representation, rural voice, community identity? And most importantly, what matters or what outcomes matter most to Waitaki residents?
Well, like you said already, Jim, local representation, and yeah, that's probably going to be the hard part. But you got to work on that, so you still get people still feel connection with the governing body. How are you going to do? It's not easy. Another thing that's really important, I think, the elected members they got the power to hold the management and to accountability, so they got some real powers, but sometimes it's lacking a bit from my point of view at the moment. I think from that point it's really important that we amalgamate with the same sort of communities, and we not get gobbled up with a big urban one, because then we probably get more problems. That's my opinion. But
okay, we all think we're a unique area. We all love our own areas. Once we start amalgamating with people, we're going to meet or butt heads with a lot of people that think the same thing. So we have to hang on to what is key in our area, our key assets that we treasure, and we have to make sure that when we amalgamate, and these are shared across a much wider district, that nothing is diminished, that the asset still stands as itself. So we've got to be careful of that and really protect it. I'm worried about the amalgamation as such when different councils or neighbouring councils, which should be similar, but really speaking, one size doesn't fit all. Everybody is unique and every council area is unique. So amalgamating them, we have to be very careful to safeguard those things that make us different.
Absolutely, local representation, rural voice, and I'd go one further and talk about the catchment. I think when we talk about the Waitaki River, the integrity of the catchment must be maintained intact. We don't need decisions being made at the top of a catchment from another unitary that will be impacting us down the bottom, so absolutely has to be maintained.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the catchments come through in all these meetings really clearly, and I think that's such an important part of who we are and our identity for us to look after. And I guess Safeguarded is very much our identity, and so part of this conversation, and we will talk about a bit later on, the ability for you guys to feed back in and that questionnaire side of things. And one of those questions is, do we look at Waitaki as a whole, and do we protect Waitaki as a whole? There's certainly a lot of conversations happening, not just in Waitaki, but sometimes even a bit further afield about splitting Waitaki into two pieces, wherever that line may be. I don't want to be a mayor that sits there and leads on any of that conversation. I think that needs to come from my community, and if it doesn't come from the community, it doesn't happen. So part of the questionnaire is also, when we're talking about what we safeguard, is that a bottom line for us, and is that important? And please let us know that, because we've got a conversation or decision to make in a week's time, which is not long enough. It's not with the right level of information, and we'll talk about whether or not we need to be making that decision in the next question. But we're doing it on very little information, so what we can gather from our community as to what's important, I think, is really important for us to hear. As to what else we protect, that local voice is really important. It's making sure we're not just one vote around a table sitting somewhere else, and your ability to actually go and talk to your local representatives and have a coffee, or to go those special projects, or the things that are important to us, that we don't lose those things that really make us us, because, you know, we're all special, all the councils around us are special, but Waitaki's special.
I think a lot of it's been said already, but I think that local voice and decision makers being in touch with their areas and in touching distance of the people they serve is really, really important in this, so that they know their local areas and they can hear the voice of their communities. If we're part of something larger, there's a danger that it's a distance away from us, and so are the decision makers, and we need to make sure that whatever arrangements we set up, those decision makers are connected to the communities that they serve.
Actually, Otto, I was waiting for you to say that whatever happens, it's got to be centred here, because with the cost of diesel, you couldn't afford to drive your tractor to Dunedin. So we move on then, as to what do you see as the pros and cons of entering the Head Start compared to waiting in the backstop process?
So I'll start on this. I think the pros of entering it is you get to shape your own destiny. And so there's a risk if you don't go into this Head Start process. The government's determined that amalgamations of reform are going to happen. They've given, within the rules, the ability for other councils to decide our destiny for us, and I think that's a real risk that we need to engage in this, so that the Waitaki community and the council can shape its own destiny. I think the cons of it is the short space of time we've got to do this, and to get it right is a real challenge. And when I led a similar process in a different country, in the UK, we took almost 2 years to go through this process, and the reason why we took that time was most of that time was taken up with engaging our communities, not just once, but going back and checking that we'd got it right. And in the end of that process, we had a referendum where 65% of the community voted in favour of what was being proposed by the councils in terms of the reform. We haven't got time to do that, and we're going to have to, the councillors are going to have to make a decision based on imperfect information and not having had chance to fully engage with all of the community. So it's a real challenge in that process.
I don't think anyone believes that any good ideas are coming out of a ministerial office in Wellington or from a group of policy boffins drawing lines on a map. And so I think the pros or the advantages far outweigh the cons. We don't need to be done to. We've got one opportunity. We have the opportunity to move quick and align what we want as a community and get it up front. I've long said that there's three groups of people in this country that aren't going anywhere, and that's government, iwi and farmers. And if I look at this community, we need to be making decisions for ourselves.
Yeah, so pros and cons, right. We're entering a Head Start process. It really is a Head Start because we are going to try and decide what's going to happen before the government has deigned to tell us what they want to happen. They haven't really come up with a foolproof design plan. I think they're waiting to get information from us. So I do have a horrible feeling at the back of my mind that we can push ahead with our head start, but at some stage down the track we'll be told, oh, that's not quite what we wanted. So I think the best idea is put our best foot forward and try and design what we want, but I am worried that we may be told that's not what the government wants.
Yeah, definitely the head start, and yeah, maybe Ray is right, but if we can unite ourselves and come to a good compromise, I think we should be able to stand pretty strong against the government, you know. But we got to find the right dance partners, and you might have to think a wee bit out of the square sometimes, but I think it's possible. And yeah, we haven't got a referendum, so we got no choice. You know, it's not like what we got in the UK. So it's one way or the other. And I think we better be involved ourselves than it's been put on. Another risk is otherwise you might get cannibalised by other districts. So yeah, you definitely want to conform that. Not happen to you. So.
Yeah, I guess as being one of the decision makers at the table on this one, it sits pretty heavy because we've been put in a shocker of a situation, to be perfectly clear. We haven't had an election based on giving anyone any mandate to do this, and that's where my problem lies, and it sits really uncomfortably. That being said, the idea that any other council, and having listened to some of the council meetings around the place, it is a risk we've got. Some other council coming in and telling the government, we'll take this bit of Waitaki because we quite like the fact that we've got some dams up there and we think they can help pay some bills, 5% of the roading budget. But we don't want those small towns down the way because they're going to cost us a little bit much in the long term. That's not okay. And so from where I'm sitting, there's a whole lot of risk at play here, but there's a bigger risk in not doing anything. And I think we are going to have to show some leadership in this space. What I'm not going to do tonight is tell you any direction that I think we should be going, because the 4 community meetings we have, they are the only opportunity we really have to be out there and talking to our community. They're in our online polls. And I really, really do recommend, please, to let us know what you're thinking, because we've got nothing to work from. The data we've got will help us somewhat, but to be honest, what comes out of that I do not think is going to give us a gleaming light of a direction to walk into. So this is going to be a wee bit of a decision of the heart, which is the wrong way to make decisions. We should be data-based. We should be understanding what that's going to mean for your rates at the end of the day. We should be understanding what it's going to mean for businesses, for our farmers, when it comes to how the rules work and who they land with and what the costs are for them, our businesses. But we're not going to know any of that. So I guess when we say the pros and cons of the backstop, look, it's all cons, really, but we've been put in this situation and I think we need to pick the ball up and run with it. And I think as much as we can get or glean from our community, the better. One of the good things about the potential of stepping into the Head Start proposal, and I don't know what this really means, is central government have said to us, hey, those that step in and get approved, that's the next part of that conversation, we will help. So they're talking about things like your long-term plans, representation reviews. So through our long-term plans, we need to go out and talk about where our lines on the map currently are around our wards and spend a whole lot of money actually canvassing that, which is insanity when we know we're not going to actually have those wards in that same way further down the track. So that should be paused. That sort of thing should be an absolute no-brainer. And there's a whole lot of things we should be doing that should be paused right now because they do not make any sense. Same with spatial planning, which is now being set up through the RMA changes. Spatial planning is being set up in 2 different regions. So it's currently going to be regionally based. So for Waitaki, we're stepping up a spatial plan in Canterbury and a spatial plan in Otago, knowing that that will not be the way our future looks. And I'm not sure about the figures looking in Otago, but I think it's $9 million it costs in Canterbury to put the spatial plan together. This is insanity. So the ability to be at the table and to work with central government to say, surely some of these things we can stop while we line ourselves up and work out where our money is best spent, because a lot of that money is just going to go straight down the drain and it makes no sense. So for me, I think that the risk of not being in the Head Start space is too high. They are saying, you know, do it yourselves or we'll do it to you. It may not be that bad, and it may actually be we're able to be at the table and part of that conversation and working through the detail. And there's also the option that if we go for the Head Start, we don't get approved, we're in that space anyway. That's not the end of the world, but I think that there's probably too much risk at play for where I'm sitting.
So we head to the final of 5 questions before we invite question and comment from the auditorium. In the speed that has been inflicted upon us, how do we best keep our community involved?
I'll start with that one, but I throw it to the panellists because it's a real question that I want to know, or want a bit of help with. Because at the end of the day, your councillors and myself, we are part of this community and we want to make the right decision. We want to be keeping you guys involved. We want to bring our community along. And we've been put in a stupid position where the timeframes are too tight for that, to do it well. When we do make a decision on Tuesday based on the limited amount of community feedback we've been able to get hold of, as well as the limited amount of data around what each of the options could look like, when we do, and I can guarantee you we're going to have a whole lot of people that are going to be very unhappy with whatever decision we make. And that's a tough place as a council to be because you can't win either way. And I do think that we need to, as a community, actually step into this conversation a whole lot, because anything we do decide and any decision we walk into, we then need to make it work, is what it comes down to. And I do think that any of the options, north or south, no matter what the breakdown could be, or whether it's a bit of a whole lot of different north and south options, no matter what, I think we can make it work because the devil's in the detail. So when it comes to things like representation, I think we can tease out how we keep our voice at the table in any of those options. When it comes to how we ring fence debt or whether we want to do those kind of things, the devil's in the detail. So I think anything does work. For me, when it comes to how we keep you guys informed, there is this very short, too short, community consultation that's going on at the moment. And then we have a decision to make. But that's not the end. That will decide which direction we choose to step into, and if we do step into the Head Start space. But then we've got a whole lot more work to do, and I think the idea of then continuing to work with your community to find some focus groups and using some of the really skilled people we do have in our community to actually build locally what that could look like and what success looks like. So when me probably as the lonely old mayor that heads to the table, whatever table it is, to make some decisions, I've actually got some community backing sitting in behind that can bring people along and can get the best outcome for our community, rather than me standing up there fighting my community for a situation that we didn't really ask for. So I guess it's a bit, I think as a community we need to be able to have these conversations in a positive way so that we can get the best outcome, because if we are fighting each other, we achieve nothing.
Right, it's all about speed. Everything's being done very, very fast. And we must keep the community involved. Now, it works to have a public meeting like this. People can come along, they can put up their questions, etc. All communication has to be timely, has to be done as quickly as possible. When it comes to the time that we need input from the community, do we do it through online questionnaires? Do decisions have to be ratified by the community? I can see, particularly in Waitaki, but probably in lots of areas, not everybody is attached to a computer. So how do we make sure that everybody that we think should be involved is involved? And of course, I think everybody should be involved. So we have to be able to communicate that well and quickly.
In addition to what's been said, I absolutely endorse the public meetings. I think having a single source of truth that the public can go to, whether that's the council page or a Facebook page, acknowledging that there's incomplete, imperfect information, so what you can share, I think at least people can take confidence that's what's up for consideration. And just remembering that it is a start. It's a head start. There will be a lot of detail to come where, touch wood, we would have the opportunity as community to feed in to some of the detail as that comes through. But I think, look, keep doing what you're doing, and as the information comes to light, and ensure that it gets shared in a digestible way and in a timely manner.
Yeah, agree with Justin, and I don't think on Tuesday or whenever we have to tell our preference that's going to be the end of the story. So yeah, and in the meantime, it's really important we keep informed, and it's going to take a little bit, probably a bit longer, but yeah, if we communicate with the community and get feedback, what their wishes are, and hopefully we might hear about some financial benefits as well, because everyone is really tight-lipped about it at the moment. So it'd be good for everyone to know what's financially going to mean. So yeah, and yeah, either online or in the paper or public meetings, a combination of those.
So yeah, I think this is the start of the process, and I was really pleased that shortly after the government announced this Head Start process, we agreed with our Otago council neighbours the first thing we wanted to do together was to get to consultation. We didn't manage to agree that with our Canterbury neighbours, unfortunately, but actually the consultation that's on at the moment is the second consultation we've done in the past few weeks, and we'll need to keep asking our community questions as we go through this process to get your guidance on what's important and how we shape this up so that it works for you. And we'll need more community meetings and engagements across the next year if we're going through the Head Start process, and probably beyond as well.
Well, thank you to the panel members, but you're not off the hook yet. So is there anyone in the audience who burningly wants to ask a question? If you put your hand up, we'll try and get some of these extremely well-paid councillors to rush across with a microphone.
Hi, thank you very much for that. It was well explained. I have a lot of questions, obviously, but one of the first ones I have is that it seems to me that it's been done the wrong way around, that we would have amalgamated councils and then looked at the water problem. So that kind of causes a difficulty, and I know you said, Mel, that things should go on hold. Are we able to put the water on hold while we're going down this track? Because logic seems to me that going slightly north would be better. But we've got the problem that we're now in southern waters, and we could be forced into that.
There's a few things in that. So can we pause it? No, is the short answer. And the trouble we had as a council, we were standing alone in the fact that, you know, we were a bit naughty and we didn't have a water services plan approved when everyone else did. What that did was probably made things more complex for us, because in the time that we were standing or getting back to the table to talk about water, then the government announced the first first part of the conversation around these changes. And we went to DIA and said, look, surely that makes the decision different from us now. It's now a different conversation. And they went away and thought about it, and they came back and said, no, it can't be. And your timeframes remain the same. So we had a decision to make as a council then, knowing the timeframes that we were working to, that do we now make this bigger and we can't land something? And to be fair, we were at the risk then, already having a facilitator on board, that we were going to have commissioners on instead making decisions for us. So the timeframes didn't change, and they wouldn't change. So it does make it more complex, but I guess if you also put it, and we were discussing this with Southern Water today actually, and the fact that we're going to need to have a look at what the Constitution looks like as things start to land in the next conversation, and say how do we make sure that the decision makers, while they may not end up being councillors per se in the Waitaki District Council, how do we make sure the decision makers remain local for our assets that are based locally? And I think that's really important. But I guess every one of the councils that we're going to be dealing with, no matter where we go, has their own CCOs and different organisations and setups that are unique to them, and we'll have to find a way through dealing with the detail and how we deal with that. So I don't think it traps us into any one particular decision. I don't think it means that's the only thing we have at play. But I do agree it was absolutely the wrong way around. But I think that probably on the flip side, going through this water activity or exercise as a country has really highlighted some fundamental issues with our infrastructure, and what that's done is probably brought government to the conclusion that small councils in particular are really struggling to keep up with their infrastructure costs, and we need to do something different. So I feel like the information that came and the learnings that came out of water were what has put this in our laps today.
Thank you, Mayor Tavendale and councillors that have, and others. My first thoughts are I'm in favour of an Otago unitary authority. 5 councils based on 2 major river systems or catchments, obviously the Waitaki from the Ohau village right down to Waitaki Bridge to the coast. The other, of course, is Te Mata'o, the Clutha River, right down to Port Molyneux, Paratai, where it disgorges into the sea. The one caveat I'll put on that is that the Catlins riding of the Clutha district, the bottom end of the Catlins riding is probably 40 kilometres south of that exit of the river. So that would have to remain accommodated within that Clutha District Council. So I promote the amalgamation of 5 councils. I have a strong condition on Dunedin City. Yes, they be part of it as long as they can get their South Dunedin thing sorted before the local government elections, and also if they can sort out their obvious dysfunction within governance. There's one person that possibly needs sacked. I can say that because I'm an individual, I'm not an elected. It's important that community of interest is promoted, but the basic reason for amalgamating is the awful realisation that we need to have a 30-year vision at least forward, and when you've got cumulative domestic inflation and input margins continually rising year on year, it's quite obvious that individual councils like Waitaki cannot remain in terms of a status quo. So we have to seek economies of scale and also accountability. Well, I'd like to promote, in terms of governance, a business approach. I would promote the idea of ratepayers electing a board of 20 directors. The 20 directors elect their own chairman, chairperson, I should say. Half of the directors are required to reside within the Otago region. The other half could be elected at large. In other words, they're elected for their expertise, perhaps experience in governance, but also their proven business acumen. They don't necessarily have to live within Otago to do that. For many, many years, our meat industry companies have operated in a similar situation. Okay, you select the best candidates that are available from a wide catchment, as long as you do have a number of the board that have that local representation. In terms of ratepayers, look, we all have an individual responsibility to do our own due diligence and do our research on the merits of candidates, people that we don't know personally, but I think it's a nonsense to expect the status quo remaining, that we need to support, you know, Mr. or Mrs. because we played golf with them or went to high school with them. I mean, those days are gone. You select the best candidates that are available and with a finite number, and currently we've got 60 to 70 electeds in Otago, including the regional council. I think the term mayor will become redundant. The term councillors will become redundant. This is my thoughts. Have a business approach to the governance of this very important aspect of our daily lives. The local control is a provincial togetherness which can push back against nonsense that might come from Wellington.
Thank you, Bruce. We're back over this side.
Kia ora koutou. I hope I don't have to stand. I wrote down my question. This is a bit left field, but considering a lot of branding of businesses and such in the Waitaki and North Otago, how would amalgamation affect that going forward?
I don't think we lose our names, and I don't think we need to. I think we can hold on to our identity while having a council that potentially has a different name.
Yeah, I agree with Mel. I think we've got a pretty well known Whitestone and Waitaki, and I don't think that's going to disappear if we're going to be part of a bigger unitary unit. It's the same as Ecan and Otago Regional Council. They haven't taken the names away from all the individual places. So, yeah, that's how I see it.
Councillor McCone, have you got someone there?
Thank you. I was looking at our pictures, particularly here we have got a picture of our mountains. Aoraki is our mountain. Waitaki is our river. We take our name from our river, and I think about Bill Timmins years ago, for those that are old enough to remember. He wrote a song, So Flow On Again Waitaki. He was a Timaru radio announcer. And I think that when you look at it culturally speaking, it makes sense to actually unite our mountain with our river and to go north, because also when you look at our lands, we are farmlands around Waitaki. We are farmlands around South Canterbury and the North Canterbury region. And I noticed, being a nurse, that when they changed the health system, and I saw what happened to the funding that was given to Dunedin for our Oamaru Hospital, was gathered up with Dunedin, and the regions all missed out. So if we go with the smaller regions now, with South Canterbury, with Ashburton, with us, and we don't go with Christchurch, Dunedin or Queenstown, then we have got more of a chance of actually working together for the smaller communities, having more of a say, of getting more funding, and really retaining all our identity, because I really feel very strongly, and I actually thought the Ngaitahu representative might have actually spoken about the cultural significance of our river and our mountain, and it also is significant for the Waitaha people as well as our valley. And as Mayor Mel pointed out, we don't want people dividing our river and our towns up, because we have our sense of identity with the land, and I really feel quite strongly about the fact that we retain the rural areas, and as I said, urban centres, big urban centres have got different needs. Our needs are of the rural community and our identities as smaller communities and smaller regions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, just seen I was called out. Yeah, it's totally support what you're saying, and I think that's been a common theme through all the community engagements over the last couple of weeks, is that in every engagement that we've been to, people have spoken about the river, the Waitaki catchment, Aoraki, as cultural, spiritual connections for everyone in the district. So yes, I didn't labour it this evening, but it's certainly been a theme that's raised by multiple speakers at all our engagements.
Thanks, panel, for fronting up tonight. I won't keep you or push my barrier for 25 minutes without any questions. I'll go straight to I have two questions. I have a preference personally to go north with four councils, north and west, not Central Otago, but Mackenzie. The first question, which you can't answer, would be the council-owned companies, Whitestone and ACL. I'm not sure what would happen with those, and like I say, you probably can't answer that. But I'm wondering about debt loading on those councils and comparable rates to ours at the moment.
Okay, I mean, some of the stuff about the companies that each of the council owns, that's in the detail that we need to work out how that works. And there's some complications as well. So if we go north, what happens to what you might consider our portion of the companies that ORC, Otto Regional Council, currently owns, so Port of Otago and its property company. There's a lot of that detail that would need to be worked out so that no community was shortchanged in that process. And then in terms of the debt and the rates side of things, you're into some of the detail as well then, and it might work in a similar way to the way that councils have come together on waters, whereby it's ring-fenced, or at least for a period of time. If you look at all the councils around us, bar two, they all have higher rates than us. I know some of you might find that hard to believe, but they do significantly. They've put their rates up considerably more than we have over the past few years, and most of them have higher debts per household as well than us. So we need to work that out in the negotiations, how we protect the position of our ratepayers, so that in amalgamating we're not taking on other people's debts. But there is another side to this as well. Those debts are often balanced out by assets. So if we wanted to protect ourselves from the debt, we might be protecting ourselves from some of the benefit of the assets that come with those other organisations. So there's no easy answer to it. It'll be worked out in the negotiations, and we need to look at how we come together in a way that all the communities win and no one community loses out from that process.
That was what I was going to jump on to, and this is where it gets really unique and quite challenging, because there's a few ways you can look at this. It's either as a partnership, whatever we do moving forward, and when you talk about things like ring fencing debt, and that's something that we need to look for, because we need to look for what is the best opportunity for our community. But there's a real risk of some councils being left as the poor cousins of someone else they're working alongside. And so the idea of if everyone that has got themselves in a fortunate position ring fences everything they do, then when we work together in an amalgamation sense, who wins? It's not the small councils, it's not the ratepayers that were already struggling. And so I don't know what the breakdown of all that looks like, but I think that we do need to take a more of a partnership approach in a way of how do we make sure everyone wins through this? Because if we have every council going, no, this is mine and this is mine and this is mine, but you can have all the bad stuff, it's just not going to work.
It'd be like a bad marriage, isn't it? Well, it is. If you're not working together, it's never going to be successful. So you got to ring fence it, but you got to aim for a common future. I think that's important.
Councillor McCone.
Hi, I'm David Bruce. I was a journalist in North Otago for more than 40 years, so I went through the 1989 reorganisation, and I think quite a lot, even though it's a long time ago, can be learnt from that. In 1989, the Omri Borough Council and Waitaki County Council couldn't agree on whether to go north or to go south, in a similar situation to where we are now. What happened was the Local Government Commission then imposed what was effectively the backstop on the region, and we ended up with the Waitaki District Council. The worst thing that happened in that reorganisation was that North Otago lost virtually any say in the Waitaki catchment. My belief is that this offers us an opportunity to get some sort of say again on the Waitaki catchment. Now, I'll be honest, I think no matter what we come up with, the district is going to be split. If we go north, I would expect that probably Waihemo would look to go south. If we go south, the Waitaki catchment will go north. The Waitaki catchment will not be split by a government. It will be administered as one whole catchment. And because Waimate and Mackenzie have a huge say in it, I'm almost certain it will go north. The Waitaki catchment is hugely important economically to this district. Two examples. Water from the Waitaki River provides domestic water as far south as Meraki. North Otago Irrigation Company provides irrigation water as far south as Herbert. That's only just two examples of how important that catchment is to us. I hope when the council comes to consider this, it looks seriously at what is the best or maybe the worst option. And to me, the best option is for the council to go north. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And I guess just to touch on that a wee bit, and in conversations I've had in Canterbury, when they start talking about the river and you have Mackenzie say, well, it's our river, so we'll be looking after that tooth and nail. And then you've got Waimati saying the same thing. And then you've got Timaru saying, the Waitaki River is 80 kilometres from us, and we feel very strongly about the management of that. So the reality is, if we look north, that becomes easier, that conversation, obviously. But if we look south, we are going to have a strong conversation on our hands when we say we want to go south, but we want to hold on to the Waitaki River. That will become challenging. I guess also, in picking up on your point, David, around that it means that part of our community will go south and we'll have a line. I don't think that's a given. And so what I think through that, and we have heard that through some of our feedback, but it hasn't been resounding so far, would be my comment. So I think that that's something that we really want to hear from our community, and in particular the Waihemo community. I think if we are having discussions on all of Waitaki, talking about lines shouldn't happen from people that aren't affected by those lines. But yeah, and just to add to that a wee touch as well, what we have a risk of, because we know that our catchments are being talked about north of us, which is where some of our risk around us not choosing ourselves and it being chosen for us comes from. There is a risk in part of our community stepping into the Head Start program and the other part of the community not being ready with a different opportunity, or whoever they would be partnering with not ready to be stepping into the Head Start space. And all of a sudden we have part of our Waitaki in Head Start, part of them on the backstop. The backstop was most likely, by the sound of things, will mean that a new council is stepped up in 2031, where the Head Start's more likely 2028. So you've got a community and a council in limbo for 3 years. And so I don't think that can happen. But I think wherever we land on Tuesday, and your feedback again is so important in this, as to whether or not we fight tooth and nail to hold Waitaki as one, whatever direction we make, then there's a whole lot of conversations that spin out of that really fast.
Thank you. I'm Linton Winder, live in Oamaru. This is a question for the panel, really. Waitaki, Mayor Mel expressed this very clearly early on. We're a very big catchment with a very big council with a very small population. If the rural option is chosen where lots of rural districts amalgamate, don't we just have a very small population in a huge catchment which will just multiply the financial problems that we're facing at the moment? And surely there needs to be some discussion about how you optimise the ratepayer base when the decision is being made.
We're not sure of all the mechanisms that central government's looking at. I would hope that if a gathering was just rural focused, like say we had Ashburton, Mackenzie, Waimati, Waitaki, and left out Timaru, don't know who they'd go with, whether central government would have mechanisms in place to address the issue that creates. As you said, a very, very large area with a very low population. So they'd have to somehow address that and say, if you're going to go and have that, then you need some mechanism to address the funding problems.
There has been one option shared at other meetings by one of the gentlemen in the front that does talk about an even expanded version of that talks about a central South Island model, which I think would address the rating base there. But yeah, I think all options are on the table. Who knows what the answer is?
Yeah, plus I don't think, out of my experience, the big urban centre's not very keen to subsidise the rural areas. You know, for example, I pay, on two of my farms, I pay $30,000 raise to ECAN, and I hardly get any service for that. So, yeah, hey, they might change their ways, but I don't think, you know, it's going to happen very soon. They're going to have the majority of the votes, so there's, you know, their population would not very be in favour of that. But I might be wrong. They might change.
I think it's a really good question, Lyndon, because that is one of the things at play here is how do we get the population working? And I know the Fed Farmers working paper, I think they were working to 120,000 people being...
Yeah, we heard some rumours from the government, but it's very unclear.
No
one really knows that figure.
No, and that's probably what I was coming to. That's one figure I've heard. I've heard 100 banded around. I've heard 80 banded around. We've asked directly to Minister Watts, we've asked directly to Minister Bishop about what numbers make it work, because also I think a lot of our options we're standing up, we don't know if they're actually viable when we look to presenting them at national level. If they've got a special number sitting in, written down somewhere in Wellington, there's a whole lot of our options that may not meet muster. Around the size thing, there's pros and cons about siding up next to a larger population, and I think, you know, the local voice in that is obviously one of the potential cons in it, which can be worked through, and a whole lot of these, the detail can be worked through. I guess as well that idea of the rural voice and looking at things differently is part of the mix. There is an opportunity for us, I think, here to be able to build a much stronger rural voice in Wellington and actually have a, you know, we're very piecemeal. We've got a whole lot of small councils that are all screaming out saying this is really hard, but we don't have a very good, strong, joined up voice, rural and provincial, and LG and Z is probably as close as we get. So I do think this offers opportunity to us to sort of actually talk about things like our roading spend. We've got some of the, you know, some massive numbers of roading, but how much Canterbury, and for instance, gets down from the national level picture is well less than what they actually produce as a area and, you know, from the rural economy. So you sort of go, maybe there's a picture and there's a story here that can actually change the whole conversation. But yeah, it's part of the mix and we don't know.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. And I've listened to all the pros and cons here tonight, and to me, this lack of information or inaccurate information, as an idea, wouldn't it be good to contact all the other councils around the country involved in this, and in one unified body, go to central government and say, listen, until we get all the facts, exactly what you want and how this is going to pan out, we can't make any decisions. It's not possible to make decisions on facts, fictions, what may be, what they'll say, what they won't say. We need to know exactly what the central government wants, because otherwise what's going to happen here, we're going down the same road as the water. We can come to a decision locally, as can all the other councils in the country come to a decision locally, and the government will simply say, well, thanks very much for your effort, but it's not good enough. We'll make that decision, we'll appoint a commissioner, and we'll take it from there. And this is what's going to happen. You can see it sticking out a mile. We can make whatever decisions we like, but unless we're unified around the country with all the councils, and I would suggest a meeting with reps from all the councils around New Zealand, and in one united front, say to the government, right, what do you want? We're sick and tired of this whole thing. This has happened with the water. Now this is the second time around. What are we going to do? We need the accurate information from you, and we'll set a deadline, not request a deadline, we'll demand a deadline. And I think this is the only way you're going to do it. Otherwise, this is the second verse, same as the first.
I agree with so much of what you're saying. I guess where the risk comes in is there's a whole lot of councils that are ready to go and they are welcoming this. So we don't have a unified voice in that. Also, when you've got councils like ourselves that are struggling financially, we really struggle to have a leg to stand on to say, hey, we know better, we don't need this. I think that we do need to be at the table having the conversation. Around It's the same as Southern Water. We've asked for a whole lot of guidance around what this could look like, and we're not getting that because they're saying to us, we want you to tell us what you think will work. And we know there's risk in that, absolutely. But there's also an opportunity for us to find something that could work and put it on the table and for it to be picked up. So there's risk, there's so much risk. I do not think there's a viability in us getting a group to Wellington and just saying no. And what will happen is those that come to the table, and some of them are going to come to the table with Waitaki's name on a list, or portion of Waitaki's name on the list is probably more to the point, and that will get done to us. And I'm sorry, but I don't actually feel like that's a good decision for me as a mayor to make.
Sorry, we're coming to a question down here, but can I just make a comment to you that as someone sitting on the sidelines, there is another aspect of this whole process. Central government is about to enter an election period, and they're the people that we should be out kicking the hell out of, those who aspire to go and make these idiotic decisions that are imposed upon us at a local level. Oops.
Thanks. I apologise to the councillors because I've been to all the meetings because I've done a lot of work on this the last couple of years and a lot of homework and feel quite strongly about what should happen. But I'm not sure if you're all aware, but yesterday a decision was made by Ashburton, Timaroo, Mackenzie and Waimati to go into Head Start together. And I think that makes the decision for us all the more clearer because the Waitaki River, I believe strongly, is the economic and spiritual part of this district. The headwaters of the Waitaki River goes right to the top of Tekapo to the Macaulay River. The headwaters of the Macaulay River is north of Timaroo. So with those four groups deciding to go into Head Start, that is your central South Island, which I've been advocating for a couple of years. And I think even though there may be personalities and there may be disagreements, that it's, and I've after Mayor Mel mentioned the number of people that have said to her, it's a no-brainer, I hesitate to use the word, but I think if we don't go into that Head Start with those other councils, we will be split. And we've got nowhere to go, and I just feel so strongly. My family have been in business in this district since 1873 in different businesses, and my family and my children are still in business here. And I have my great-grandfather's diaries, both of them, who both had businesses in Oamaru, and they talk about the Waitaki and going to Mount Cook. And it's strong then in the 1800s, and it's strong now. With that group that decided yesterday to go together, if we were part of that, we would have 75% of the irrigation in New Zealand. We had 70% of the hydroelectric power in New Zealand. We have the high country properties from Shag Point right through to the Lindis to the Rakaia. They speak as one voice to the government now, very united. The foothills and the catchments are all so close together, the Rangitata and the Rakaia. And the rural servicing towns of Ashburton and Timaroo and Oamaru, I don't believe will be subject to the politics that we've seen in Dunedin and Christchurch with ECAN and ORC. I think the people are genuine people and they act in the best interest of the district. And I just think economically and politically, that group together, it would be, regardless of who the government is, it would be a very strong economic and political voice when we speak, if we're part of that group. And this is a very important decision, and Mel has mentioned a number of times that they feel they haven't got the mandate, but at the end of the day we elected you to govern, and that's what good governance is all about. You've got to show leadership, you've got to show vision, and we put you there to govern, and you can't rule by committee. You've got to talk to the people, I understand that, but you cannot rule by committee. And Bruce McNabb, my friend, I agree on your second point. I don't agree with the going with Dunedin City, but a board I think is a great idea with a chairman elected. I think 20 is too many. Fonterra, who's the largest company in New Zealand, had 13 and they chopped it down to 10. I think that's all it should be, but it should be run like a business. And we've got to get good governance. We have good governance, then we'll have good executives. What people haven't mentioned is there'll be 7 CEOs that will lose their jobs in the next 2 years, from ECAN to ORC and everything in between. And everyone's talking about being big. I would envisage some of these councils being smaller, because there'll be a lot more efficiencies, and if it's run like a business, they'll be a lot more efficient. Thank you.
No, thank you. And just to confirm that no-brainer, I've heard that no-brainer thrown at me from both north and south options, so it's amazing how much of this is a no-brainer. But thank you, appreciate that.
David, what if we take Cluta and Alex to that one? I mean, you say it's a long way, but you know, in Dogterom we're in ECAN, and that goes all the way to Kaikoura at the moment. So, you know. Yeah.
Is this turned? Yes, it is turned on. The area north of us come to Waitaki and give you the option of saying, we would like to come with you, or do you want to come with us, before they decided to go alone?
There's a few things at play there. So I've been in strong conversations with North Timaru, Ashburton, Mackenzie, Waimate, as well as all the councils south of us. Absolutely the door's open, and I know that we're not one of the preferred options that Timaru has put on the table. Look, I'm going to be really frank here. If we look north, there's a real need for the smaller councils not to have all the decisions made by a bigger council. And so balance is really important part of that. So while trying to be really politically careful in this one, because it is a live streamed conversation, I think that there's a real willingness for Mackenzie and Waimate to have other people and other voices at the table to help balance the conversation. And so I'm taking that very seriously. That's a very political way of putting something.
Yes, Murray Elliott. I just like to thank David Bruce and David Douglas, and with the woman here. But I'm in favour of going north. The reason being, in particular, it's already been explained by them, but I think metropolitan areas should look after themselves. They don't know our rural areas. I had a conversation, I heard the Otago Regional Council were invited up here to have a look at the dairy farming systems, and one of the councillors from Dunedin said, what a shame they're taking the water out of the Waitaki River. It should be left in there rather than having these irrigation schemes to that effect. And, you know, we don't want the situation like I'm missing Jeremy Clarkson's television program right at the moment.
Sorry about that.
But there he was. He had to go to 24 different bodies to get a consent for his opening a restaurant on his farm. 22 agreed and 2 opposed, and he went there and he lost it, and then it was going to cost $500,000 to appeal. We don't want to be governed by people that don't understand our rural districts.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else got a burning question? Sven, here, gentleman here in the middle.
Yes, I just wanted to talk about cities and towns and rural areas, and I'm a fan of a central provincial unitary council that splits off the likes of Christchurch and Dunedin and so on, because They are cities and they've got a city economy. Our economy is driven from our rural area, so when we're talking about the differences between town having to pay for what's going on in the rural, it's all part of our economy, and everyone that works in town is in secondary production industries, whether it's freezing works or woolen mills or whatever it is. It's dependent on that rural area, so we're all in the same boat, and I just think that's the right sort of model for provincial New Zealand that doesn't has got no other way of surviving and making crust, and so it upsets me if we start to talk about who's cross-subsidising who and so on, because we're all in it together, and our strength is really working together and the resources that we've got, which is why it's important to hang on to that river.
Thank you.
It's 7:55, so we've gone slightly longer than a couple of the other meetings, a little bit shorter, but I'm going to draw it to a close unless anyone's got a burning question. I'll start one for Mayor Mel. I will follow you north if that's the way you choose, but I'll never wear a Crusaders jersey.
That sounds like a bloody good idea. No one has to change their colour of their jerseys, and no one has to change their name in this mix. Like, I think no matter what, we need to hold on to our identity, and we know who we are. So, I think we've got another speaker down there.
Have you gone flat, Councillor McCone?
Sorry, I just got two questions if I could. The first to Mel, is the survey still running? Because it was originally indicated on your website it was going to finish on June the 12th, I think. And have you got any indication so far as to how that is trending? And if I could direct one to Mr. Tipa that may be a little unfair, but bearing in mind that the Meraki Rananga, along with Waihau and Arawhenua, has your Rananga got any view on where Waitaki should go? Thank you.
You can start on that one.
Good question. I think regardless of how the new council boundaries will be drawn out, Unanga boundaries stay the same. We're already used to working with multiple councils and regional councils at any one time, so it's not too big a change for us. I think my first priority would be ensuring that the Waitaki catchment stays intact, and I don't think there's much chance of that being split up. So I'm not sure if it answers your question, but however the cards fall, we're used to working with multiple councils and stakeholders.
And so just around the questionnaire, so the original one we had out there did close, and so what we've done is it's a bit of more a succinct style one where we really went, now we are at the stage after community meetings and during these to actually ask a few more pointed directive sort of questions, which is the where, and is the do you want to head into backstop, and head start, and Waitaki as a whole. So they're the main ones. That's open at the moment. I think we have on some of the paperwork that's open till Tuesday. Really recommend if we can get as much as we can through by Friday, because then it'll make the council actual report. Other ones we will get dropped in front of councillors in time, but that's really helpful for us to get it early so we can actually have a bit more informed report that can go out to the community as well. As to where it's sort of sitting at the moment, I haven't looked at it lately, it's been a little bit busy, but the last time I did look at it, South Canterbury did seem to be trending slightly stronger as the preferred option, but there weren't massive numbers, so I think I really want to encourage people to get involved, because we are looking at that really closely. No, it hasn't been. So yeah, it'll be part of the papers, but also I think what we were trying to do in these meetings, the reason why we closed the other one off and then started a new one which was shorter and sharper, was to get people along to community meetings so it could be a little bit more informed as to what's going on before we're asking people that, which is, it's tough. There's no easy or right way to do this because we don't have time to do it well.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. As one of those poor refugees from down in Waihemo, I was happy to come up and work for the Mayor tonight. But please do remember, we've been supporting Oamaru since 1989, and don't forget us. Travel home safe.
Don't lose too much sleep over the Crusaders or Otago. We can all support the Warriors up the Wā. So.